Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, starseeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening, and for my official first interview back with the podcast being back, I have the amazing Christopher, the Astro Medium. I know you all remember him because I got so much positive feedback after that first interview that we had together. Christopher and I become good friends, and we have lots of awesome conversations. So we're excited to share this one with you today. Thank you for being here, Christopher. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. I really enjoy our time together at all times. You, just so everyone knows, we found each other through all of this, through people and through Instagram and all this kind of stuff. But there's a lot of bullshit out there. And there's also just a lot of people that I don't resonate with. And we're definitely on that same level and in that same realm. And I really appreciate that because we are not the majority. None of us light workers are, but we, in the community that we're in, we are still not the majority. So we're not ahead either, but our view on things are just a little bit more real, raw, and open, and I would say broad, and allowing all these new energies to come in such a way. This is uncharted territory. We think we know what we're doing and we don't. And so people like us, we're really sure about ourselves, but we're also really sure that we don't know what's going to happen next always. So having that very human, like, we've never been to this part of the forest. Okay. We're blazing a new trail for sure. And I appreciate you coming along the ride and us finding each other on that trail. It's been incredible and very validating for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. It's really nice to just have somebody who, yeah, exactly. Like, neither of us is so fixated on our perspective, or that we have the truth, that we can be very authentic together, very much in our human experience. So let's start off by talking about, because you are the Astro Medium, and so you know about the astrology that's going on right now. And I know that there is a lot going on. I feel it in the weather. Can you tell us what's up?
First of all, I just have to let everyone know, I did not know when I came up with that name that people were going to call me that. Okay. It's still so funny to me because, again, it adds to the showmanship and the package, I guess. I didn't know any of this was going to happen. So it's really surreal, though. I do have to say that your people are calling me the Astro Medium. It's like that guy. It's very strange. And it's an honor, too, that people actually see me as that, too, because it was just something I put together. And so for people who aren't aware of what that means, this Astro Medium thing, because I would consider myself an Astro Medium. It wasn't necessarily that I was supposed to be the Astro Medium, but I am an Astro Medium, which is someone who is a psychic medium. I'm also an Ascension and Awakening facilitator, but I use astrology, specifically quantum astrology, to activate and navigate the higher potentials for people. And Spirit knows that I have all of this astrological knowledge. So sometimes in a reading with me, they'll show me Neptune or something that's in their chart. I'll see Scorpio energy and they'll have rising and moon in Scorpio. So the whole astrology thing for me is actually a psychic medium experience on top of it being something I'm seeing or reading. Sometimes I will download people's charts intuitively, and because I don't ask for people's birth information until about 20 to 30 minutes into the reading, depending on how much time they have with me, so that I don't see it beforehand. So that's really what that means, this Astro Medium thing. And yes, there's so much happening right now astrologically. And the main energies that I want to point to right now, of course, one of the most important energy signatures of 2022 is Jupiter in Pisces forming a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. Jupiter traditionally ruled Pisces, Neptune rules Pisces. So the two of them share rulership of this ethereal, otherworldly sign. And so the two of them are very dignified in the sign of Pisces and functioning very well. And now they're going to join forces, and Jupiter's going to expand that Neptunian energy, and Neptune's going to dissolve our Jupiterian belief systems, our philosophies, our religious outlooks, the way we perceive life from that higher perspective. All of that's being shifted, dissolved, also elevated, ascended. Neptune does bring the energy upward, but it brings it upward into a state of illusion, just like your dreams. It's not that that actually happened. There is an illusion to your dreams. It doesn't mean that it's not real or possible to be made real. It's just that it appears to be a certain way. So on top of the magic and wonder of all of this Pisces energy and with Jupiter and Neptune, there also comes falsehoods, deception, deceit, scam energy. And that's generally because Pisces energy softens our boundaries, opens our heart and our compassion, and weakens our left brain hemisphere rational analysis mind, and intensifies our imagination and intuition, which could also intensify the tendency to see something for what it isn't. So on top of all of the energies that are happening right now, that's the one that people are truly feeling the most, and that's Jupiter's fault, because Neptune's been in Pisces for a while. And Jupiter and Neptune have not formed a conjunction in the sign of Pisces like this for over like 150 years. So this is a once in a lifetime in this incarnation transit that we should be utilizing to our highest potential, which is doing more spiritual work, doing more connecting with the higher self, connecting with your intuition, dream work, journaling, creativity, and knowing that there will be times where you're roped into something, or you're brought into something, or you believe something, or you have this immense hope for something special and magical to happen, and it isn't. It appears not to be that way after all, no matter what, positively or negatively, going to sharpen your discernment and strengthen your spiritual connection if you allow it to.
Yeah, I'm really feeling it. Really, really, really feeling it, like massively.
What are you?
Well, I feel super creative, super psychically
too.
awake and connected, and just almost like it feels like I'm microdosing on something, but I'm not. Like
Right.
by microdosing, I mean, and it would be like a high microdose. Like I'm kind of always walking around in this kind of like some surreal, like Alice in Wonderland sort of like trippy experience, which is sometimes not convenient because I'm also, like momming and cooking, having to like pick my daughter up at a certain time and
Which is very grounding for you.
yes, it is. That's right. Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But that's how it's feeling. And this like massive expansion in my comprehension of like what is beyond the scope of this kind of 3D and mostly 4D experience that we're having. Like I really
very 4D right now.
Mhm.
Yes, it's interesting that you would bring that up, because we're always talking about 3D, 5D, and I have a lot of people going, well, what happened to 4D? Well, the fourth dimension still exists within duality, but it is that in-between place where things are still physical or have form, but it's the astral plane. That's what Neptune really represents, is taking you into that dream place, that astral plane, where you go when you sleep, when you dream, or where you place your focus, I should say. You don't go there. You are already there all the time, but you bring your focus into the awareness of the astral plane. And so people are noticing extremely vivid dreams at this time. Lots of star seeds are coming into their power because they're getting major downloads in their dreams about spaceships. Anytime there's a lot of Neptune and Pisces energy and Aquarius energy, because we are experiencing a buildup of Aquarius energy right now, we're going to be dealing with some weird, out there, extra dimensional contact, strange psychic phenomenon going on. So with all of this Pisces and Aquarius energy, no wonder so many people are seeing all of these UFOs and having contact, because our beliefs are catching up with that reality, but also our connection is strengthening because our physical dimension barrier is weakening, and that's what Neptune is helping to do. but that can also make you feel very ungrounded, spacey, not rooted in something. So we have to really stay grounded at this time.
Absolutely. And I feel like the grounding is what helps us with what we just did an Instagram live. You can go and check it out. But we were talking about spiritual discernment. And I feel like the grounding is what really helps us to discern, because if we're, like you were saying in our conversation, like if you're floating around, like really feeling like it's time to go for a hope or a dream, but it's not real. Like, the question of how to discern, Christopher and I would never tell you not to go for your dreams. Quite the opposite. We're like, go for it, do it. But there is
Right.
there is a point where you have to know, or at least have a sense of whether you are deluding yourself or not. And meaning that, you know, again, I would never err on the side of your self-doubt. Never, ever, ever. But there is a point where you want to be connected to the earth. You want to be grounded so that you can see, like, what is the next actionable step. I don't have to have the whole game plan, but can I move forward with this in an actionable way? That grounding, like, as much as it annoys me to have to watch the clock and pick my daughter up at a certain time,
Right.
because when we get even time, you're right, that is a
Exactly.
grounding force. It helps to contain all of this expansive Jupiter, Neptune, Piscean energy.
And now it is Aries season, and Mercury has gone into Aries. Pallas is in Aries. That's a really interesting energy that Pallas would be in Aries. And I do blame her for some of the unrest that's going on right now. If you pay attention to Pallas, you'll definitely see how conflict is resolved within the world. And she is not in her favorite sign. Pallas does not want to be in Aries, the fighter. She's the defender, not the offender. So she's the goddess of war, where Mars is the god of war. So she moves through grace and ease, diplomacy, sometimes manipulation. Being urged more fight as we move towards the new moon. This is truly a new beginning point, and this is when you really want to plant those seeds.
That's interesting. Which sign does Pallas usually love?
So Pallas, the asteroid of wisdom, mental healing, pattern recognition. And so what Pallas does is she shows me how you spot patterns in your reality and within your matrix. And she is a mental healing asteroid. So although Chiron is the wounded healer and is the healing asteroid, so is she. She's mental healing. So what's really cool right now is Chiron is in Aries, Pallas is in Aries. So Chiron is truly starring in this new moon in Aries experience and forming a conjunction to each other recently over the past several weeks. That is healing on so many levels, because Chiron shows what needs to be healed, what needs to be transmuted, and where you're storing that trauma and that pain and that insecurity. And Pallas there can actually help, once it's transmuted, to embed that new code into the neural pathways for it to become a solidified part of your healing, of your new experience, your new paradigm. As you energetically release, then it shows up as physical coding in the neural pathway. And this is why it's so important at this time to know what it is you really want, because the energy really shifted. Now we're in all of this Aries energy. Sun, moon on Friday, sun, moon, Mercury, Chiron, Pallas, all in Aries together. There's a lot of big blood boiling energy with that. There's primal, impulsive energy. People are getting really worked up. You're probably noticing at this time lots of old stuff coming up within relationships, friendships, people misunderstanding each other, people ready to set boundaries with each other, but sometimes taking it to the extreme. So there's a lot of offending each other, and there's a lot of conflict happening within partnerships and relationships right now. And there's a lot of people that are ready to leave your energy, and not because they're bad, but because you've moved to the next stage of this. And so you're having it out, or you can heal through that. There's a lot of triggers happening right now with this Chiron energy. So these triggers are coming up, and we're doing it for each other. We're offending each other somehow without meaning to. If we can keep that higher perspective and know that they're not wanting to offend me, I brought them to me to reveal something about myself. You can still yell and scream. Do it. Be a human. I love it. I've got lots of Leo in my chart. I have Mars in Leo, Moon in Leo, Venus in Leo. I'm going to yell. I'm going to put on a show. But once I get that out, then I can see how that was benefiting me in some way. That one more thing I'm going to say about this, and part of what I'm experiencing now is people are trying to spiritually bypass themselves. Quit trying to reach your healing before you've moved through it. So this is a message for you then as well, because I'm doing it where it's like someone will cut you off in traffic. There's a lot of Aries energy right now. So you immediately go for fuck you. And then you say, oh my gosh, you're not spiritual. What kind of person are you yelling at people like that? The impulse struck that meant that your system responded in that way. And if you say, no, spiritual people don't do that, you suppressed that emotion and you pushed it down and you helped it to lodge itself somewhere or to disturb your digestion later, instead of just expressing it like a human being and then filling that empty space once you released it with something good and wonderful and woo-woo. First, you do have to do the primal work, which is if I responded to it in that way, I must release it and process it later, or it is going to conglomerate and turn into something bigger. So please remember this, especially with these Aries energies right now. It's really okay to be human. It's okay to have some aggression that needs to come out. This idea that you're not spiritual for getting mad at someone in traffic, or you're not spiritual if you're yelling or beat a bush up outside with a tennis racket. I might be telling on myself, but it's really important that we get that out. And don't you see, I apologized to the bush, but I also told the bush I was giving it to the bush. I take it from me. The earth wants to do that. Go out into the trees, scream out in the woods, let it out. There's nothing wrong with purging these emotions and being human. That is what makes you a divine being, is all of the different facets of yourself. And that's what we have astrologically right now. It's all this Aquarius energy, Pisces energy, so genius, so intuitive, so otherworldly. And now we're being slammed back down in our body with all this Aries energy. And Chiron's there saying the wound is in the cells, the wound is in the body, the wound is in the ego. This is where we need to go to clear this stuff out.
Oh, I love everything that you're saying. And just to, wrap my own self out, I shared on a couple lives that I did that so I spiritually bypass anger all the time, like my whole life, or at least my whole adult life. It's my least comfortable emotion. And so when I get angry, what happens is I can see the whole bigger picture. That's a gift that I have. And so because I can see the whole picture, I'm like, well, I don't have to be angry because I understand
Right.
this happened and that happened and blah, 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 blah. But the wound is in the cells. The wound is in the ego. It's still there.
Yes.
And so this past week, I was feeling it. And finally on Thursday, William was just having a moment where he would just, as babies do, like cry the second I put him down, even though he's totally fine. He's got Leo, very dramatic himself. And
yes, that was me.
I lost. First I yelled at him and was like, stop crying, which I'm not a yelly mom. And that's not what I desire to do. But as soon as it came out, I was like, oh, you have to let this out. So then I directed away from him and I screamed like a banshee for about 3 minutes. So, and then I went out into nature and had that huge, profound download.
Of course, because you cleared it out. You made room for the new download.
Yeah. And so it's
you're losing out because in expressing that emotion, you express it. You allow it to move through your body. That's what emotions are, energy and motion. And if you're not going to dance it out, I have a lot of people with Virgo in their chart getting readings from me. It's just Pisces and Virgo energies a lot. And so for those people, they don't want to dance because they're not good at it, because they're not good at anything. If you're one of those people, just experiencing the motion, writing it, going to a tree and crying it out, putting it somewhere. But for those of us who do have big energy, we have to express ourselves. And it's sometimes at this time because there's a lot of Lilith energy happening as well. Okay. There's a lot that wants to be purged and Lilith she's constantly linking up in some confusing ways with other planets. And that energy stores a lot of trauma, sexual trauma, abuse, rage. There's something really dangerous and volatile about it, and somewhat scary, because it's something that we store in our subconscious, and it wants to be released and purged, and the power wants to be taken back. Well, sometimes taking your power back is not just sitting in your power and knowing everything's going to be okay. Sometimes taking your power back is animalistic, and there's a rage and a succubus energy, because that's what Lilith is. She's a she demon, and there's this kind of very dangerous, very primal, animalistic rage that wants to come out sometimes. And that's what's scaring people, because they think, who am I becoming, or what's happening to me? Just let it pass through you. Let it pass. Anger, rage, they all vibrate higher than depression, shame, guilt. You all are trying to transmute all of these densities, and that's the way out of it. Even Abraham, it's Abraham 101, is moving through anger when you're getting out of depression. It's part of the emotional scale. But if you think about it, the reason that anger and rage feels the way it does is because it's actually getting the blood moving. So something can cellularly and energetically be released and disposed of. It gets those toxins and those emotional chemicals to reach your digestive system faster, so you can dispose of them that way too. So this whole suppressing of the anger, it's okay. There's trauma involved in that, but there's also so much power in being human and not going up to the top of the mountain and meditating all the time, going down to the bottom in that valley and doing the real work, growling and being very human. Okay. And getting upset and allowing yourself to be upset, and then forgiving yourself after. There's nothing stronger than transmutation than that forgiveness and that self-love. There's nothing more powerful. You could spiritually progress faster stealing something from someone and then forgiving yourself for it fully and saying, I can do better, than not having any of those experiences. And I'm not telling anyone to go out here and steal something as a spiritual exercise. We don't need to do any of that. You're using the duality to your advantage. That's how you crack the code of the 3D matrix. You don't exist within the duality. You use the duality as a propulsion device. You pull back into the dark so you can slingshot even further into the light. And then you do it again. And then I don't know how else to explain it. It's like taking a few steps back so you could propel 8 steps forward, and you keep doing that, and you're making sometimes more progress than just staying steady on your spiritually bypassing woo-woo trail. Okay. There's some of us do need to come back and then propel forward, and then we can even move out of that at some point. But if you're not really evolved beyond that truly in your process, you have to accept where you currently are. And it's okay to be in a very human part of yourself and not have all the answers, and not be able to just breathe your way through it and tap your way through it. Sometimes it has to be expressed. And that's what our parents were doing. That's what people were doing for thousands of years. They were taking it out on their children. They were expressing it. They just weren't doing it consciously. And so now we have to clear all that. So
yeah.
But that doesn't mean we're better than those people we came from, those ancestors. We are very much like them. It's just we have the ability to know where can we focus this very human energy.
Right.
Without it.
Yeah. So we're not projecting it anymore. We are just expressing it.
Yes. And releasing it, making room, because what you did was you screamed out something and it opened up a little room. And what's happening right now in the ascension energies is a major purge over the last month and a half. Lots of skin rashes, itchiness, purging, nausea, literally throwing up. People are getting rid of stuff, and so much anger and rage coming out. But a lot of people experiencing the dark night of the soul, spiritual depression, suicidal ideation, which is stuff that I know all so well, thanks to Kundalini awakening and my spiritual journey up to this point. And once you clear all that out, you have an emptiness within you because you just cleared out. And so that feels hollow. but you have to sit with that and sit with that emptiness. And then you'll start to receive things. And then you'll start to be brought teachers and knowledge that is more in alignment with the new energy that you're currently at, because you just raised your vibration. And then you'll fill those empty spaces in with more of who you really are and what really feeds you. You've got to give it time for that. So there's a whole process of depression, being down, feeling empty for a bit because you just emptied out. You got to give yourself time to rest. And depression is the easiest way for your body to get you to rest. So look at it like, oh, that's my body wanting me to rest, instead of I need medication. It doesn't, just think about that. And then you have this filling back in phase, which feels really good. And that's where you move to the next level.
Yeah. I mean, I just had that in January, February, where a lot was, well, a lot was moved out. And then I had this weird blank filling in phase. And it did feel very similar to depression. But
Me
because I've
too.
had depression in the past,
Me too.
it's not depression though.
For 3 weeks in January, it was just like I didn't want to do anything. It felt like depression, but it felt like you need to get ready for what's about to happen. And just a month later, I got this huge download and had this incredible plant medicine journey where I realized that I am actually a star seed. It's not just something that I help other people with. And there was so much information that came in, and there was a lot of dark stuff too. So many evil faces in that journey, and so many almost demonic looking energies. And I just kept laughing and saying, I'm not scared anymore. I'm not scared of you. And I kept telling the medicine, do it. Show me, bitch. I said, you should have heard me. I was so vocal too. I said, show me, bitch, keep doing it. You can either show me stuff that's interesting, or you can show me these scary things that I'm not scared of anymore. And then about an hour later is when the download hit. It was like they just needed me to know you can handle anything scary because you've been to the bottom. You can't get any lower. And I'm being honest about that. The amount of darkness and scary things that I have experienced, it was showing me that at one time this would have bothered you and unsettled you, and it's not anymore. You want it to happen more because you know it's just an illusion. You know that it's just your darkness. You know it's you. And now you're ready for this truth. You're ready for the truth because you've accepted who you really are.
Yes. Yes. And I feel like that's what I mean. It reminds me of, I understand that's kind of the bardos in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, is this like period of, I can't remember how many days it is, maybe like 40 days or something like that, after you die, where you're in the astral plane and you're just like visited by all these demons, and they're just like boogeymen, dancing in front of your face. And in order to achieve
Interesting.
moksha, you need to stay in your power and remember that they are all illusions. They are illusory.
Wow, that's exactly what I'm not familiar with the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I've heard of this in moksha. I've heard of these things, but I did not know that this, because you're basically describing what I went through, was this kind of like showing me these spaces. And these are things I've seen in journeys before, and it really unsettled, right? This was something that I was just like, bring it on. I could almost tell that it was me trying to scare myself, and it wasn't working. And then the download came right after that.
Yeah, because I feel like those things are like initiations. It's like you pass the initiation, or maybe the previous experiences, all the culmination of the experiences you've had were the initiation, and that was the test for you to be able to stay in your power. And then you're able to now receive this information that, because you can wield it, because you can be grounded with it, basically.
Yes. And be able to help other people with their darkness and their shit, while not simultaneously being afraid of my own. There's an unsteady energy there. Okay. There's something not anchored about that. So part of what it did for me is allow me to accept more things about myself, which I'm still accepting. There's still things that I work through, and there will always be, but there's a level of shame and fear of myself that has been transmuted and is leaving my system, so that when other people come into my energetic space, how can I tell you not to be ashamed of yourself if I'm actually deep down ashamed of myself? Right? So there's a lot of that has to go. and it's making me a better healer, a better reader, a better teacher. And it is the scariest, hardest work you can do is the shadow work that needs to be done right now. It's shadow work. There's a lot of inner child stuff coming up for us with all this Aries energy, but we're having a Pluto return here in the United States, and that affects the entire world. And the Pluto return is major transformation and shadow work being done on a collective level.
Oh, absolutely. Like I just feel like basically what it feels like to me, kind of having a more surface level understanding of the astrology than you, and just sort of my tendency is to sort of I feel like I sense the edges of the energy and I try to translate it, but it usually matches that. But it feels like the whole entire matrix, and I don't mean the false illusory matrix, that's part of it, but I mean the bigger matrix, and I mean matrix in the, a crystal grows on a matrix, like the
Yes.
span of reality. That
Yes.
is, it's completely shifting, and it almost looks pixelated to me, like in Minecraft, like I'm seeing all these blocks moving into entirely new places, which speaks
Yeah,
to
because
what.
it's becoming a whole different picture.
Yeah, exactly. And like the relationships you were talking about that are like, some people are coming, some people are going, like some people who have been in your life for a long time. It doesn't have to be dramatic, but also maybe sometimes it does, because that allows
Yes,
me.
because that's how some of us deal with things, is it has to
Yeah,
be big for us to activate it.
that's right. And but ultimately it's not personal. It's the entire fabric of reality is shifting right now, and there's so much in motion. But let's talk about extra dimensional contact and starseed missions, because
Yes, let's do it.
yeah,
So, well, this is something I've known about for years. My dad used to tell me when I was a kid that he saw three ships coming together in his telescope and how they shot off away from each other. So my entire life I believed in extraterrestrials because my dad did, and in extra dimensionals, I should say. My dad and I had a really toxic relationship until now. Now we're incredible. Healing works, and I'm talking to all of them. Healing works, plant medicine works, Akashic readings work, getting your energy clear. I mean, I have done so many different healing modalities, but I'm telling you right now, I had a journey, a plant medicine journey about my dad and all the men in my family. And ever since, it's come up a couple other times, a little bit, but ever since he has shifted, he's different. He talks to me different. He looks at me different. We have a totally different relationship. So, and this is somebody who I thought, and I don't think he'll ever see this, but who I thought when this person died, I wasn't going to feel anything. I can't believe how, and just in February, a year after the journey I had about him, he also came up, and this is important. He came up with my mother, because this was about my mom and all the women in my family, this last journey I had. And I kept hearing mama, and I kept seeing my parents, and they basically showed me that I chose my parents, and that I have a feeling I could have been on one of those ships that he saw, because it was just a few years before I was born that he saw those ships in that telescope. And I could have been on one of those ships, kind of, because I saw myself bringing them together. And they kept telling me that my parents are not my parents and to let go of them. And I didn't understand that at first. And that they're actually like my children, and I brought them together. I have an entirely different perception of my parents now as not older people that need to be taken care of, as like my babies, as people I brought together to help all of this happen. It's a totally different sensation. And so my experience with them is so different, but also my dad, after I had that journey, I called him and told him, and he said, "Oh, it's interesting. I just watched a video on something called starseeds. Do you know what that is?" And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I know what a starseed is." And I think that they're starting to communicate with parents as well, because they're both psychic. They don't look at themselves that way. My mother uses Svedka to make sure that she doesn't feel any of that. Ooh, gosh, I hope she doesn't ever see this. But they're incredible people. You have to understand, my parents are just so special. They really are. And sun in Pisces, my dad, my mother, moon in Pisces, and my mother's rising in Cancer like me. I came from very sensitive, intuitive, home body, emotional energy. And my dad is Moon and Leo like me. So I'm very much like them astrologically and obviously genetically. So there's this special experience I'm having right now of letting go of them as my human parents. It's a process I'm dealing with every day that does not feel hard for some reason, because it feels like they're asking me to let go of them, because we will be together in spirit. We will always be linked energetically, but it was like they needed, my star family and spirit needed me to let go of my parents dying at some point, because that has bothered me every day of my whole life up until the past month. I've thought about it, and it has been a heavy, dreadful feeling in my body, and it's pretty much gone. And it's almost like, let them go, let them return to spirit, because you got here and now you've got this huge mission and there's something big that's going to happen. And I hate saying this because of the way it's going to sound, but not everyone is going to pass through this threshold or through this screen or this gateway. I'm going to call it that. Not everyone's going to go into this realm of existence, and they may be gone by the time we move into this realm of existence. And they needed me to realize the bigger picture and know where my trajectory was. Like, your trajectory is much further and much larger than the two human parents that you used to get here. They're special to you, but let go of them being your reason for existing at a cellular level, and let go of them, of your purpose and your joy in life leaving when they die, because that's not going to happen. Because the reason that you've come here, you've not fully realized, even in the slightest yet, is what they were showing me. And I felt in that I kept seeing spacecrafts, ships, I don't even like calling them that, spheres of light over the cabin we were at, 3 of them, about 30 minutes after I told the entire group of clients, some of them I've never met before, some of them good clients of mine, keeping them entertained before we get started, because that's what I do, talking about extra dimensionals, hybrid children, spaceships in the sky that I've seen, describing them. And then we go outside and there are 3 of them above the cabin. It's incredible. And if you all have not watched the documentary Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind with Stephen Greer, it is really the whole idea of getting in groups and contacting them and calling them forward with heart and brain coherence is so groundbreaking and so revolutionary that we're going to, in the next several years, have so much contact happening that it won't even be something that the government says, yeah, we think it's real and it's possible. No, it's going to be so in our face. And some people are going to be really scared and run from that. And those are the people that we've got to be letting go of, because the people that are interested in it and ready for that, that's why a lot of this is happening. That's part of the ascension that's happening right now. Is it's a galactic ascension. It's to get us in closer resonance so that we can link up and work with these beings in a very real way. Instead of it being something that just comes through downloads and dreams, it becomes something fully realized, and it becomes intergalactic connection on a physical level, which is what it should be, which is what it was always supposed to be before the 3D matrix locked us into a loop program, which there's nothing wrong with that. We got to let go of the elite and the reptilians and the oversoul here. Sometimes they do have a agenda that does not match ours. Let it be. Let them have that. Let them have their evil. Let them do that. That has to be experienced. It has to be. We don't have to experience it. We don't have to activate it, but its potential for that exists. So let people realize that and color those lines in on their own. And you stay focused, like they told me, on your trajectory and where you're going, because you got to go with what feels right to you.
Yeah, I agree with that so much that you can stay in the loop if you want to. If you want to stay in the loop of like bouncing back and forth between the polarities and being stuck between like the extremity of evil and the extremity of benevolence, can, but free will is not an experience we can have without the full darkness being anchored. And by darkness, I just mean the distance from love, like the separation
Right.
from
Yeah.
like it, you know, it has to exist on some level. We don't have to choose it, but it has to exist in order for us to experience free will. And that is what that's kind of the whole name of the game here. But I feel right now, like everything you're saying and the conversations I've been having lately and hearing about other people's dreams and stuff like that, I feel like we've shifted into a new phase of this whole mission. And what
Absolutely.
last year, like even in December, what felt like prophecy now feels like is currently underway. It's currently happening. And I
Yes.
feel like there are so many people who are losing that sense of shame that held us back from, like, for example, like even your dad saying, I just watched a program about star seeds. I feel as though people who never would have talked about this stuff before or have been secretly, closetedly wondering about it and
Yeah.
wondering if they're crazy and if they're being judged, now it just almost feels normal. Like some of the edge of that shame has been dissolved, and we're just
Yeah.
like, oh no, like I'm pretty sure I'm an alien. I'm pretty sure.
Yes. Yes. I had a friend of mine who we had a pretty intense conversation in I guess about 5 days ago. And I'm not even really sure if we're friends anymore, where that was an example of, I just don't think this is right for me anymore. And we've known each other for a long time. And she said, oh, I just read a book on star seeds. What kind of star seed are you? And it hit me the wrong way. I'll admit, she said, I'm an Andromedan. And I said, well, how did you come to that conclusion? Well, it says in this book, it's the one that matches my personality the most. And I was just like,
Mhm.
I should have just let her have it. I should have just been like, that's awesome. That's what I should have done. But one side of me wanted to be like, are you, you can't just claim that like that out of a book. Although, yes, she can. She can have that. Are you sure that you're not a Pleiadian or an Arcturian? Why are you an Andromedan? Just because this book says that your human personality matches that star seed. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, or a lot of information that's being given to people. I should have thought in that moment, it doesn't matter. She's got a book about star seeds. This woman who is 60 years old, who's a very good friend of mine, has a book about star seeds and is excited about it, thinks she's an Andromedan star seed, and it doesn't bother her one way or the other. She's drinking her wine and she thinks she's an Andromedan star seed, and that's it. There's nothing beyond that. I told her, I said, there's a mission involved. There's a strong purpose. She was like, you don't think I have any of that? She doesn't. She has no desire to do any of this. There's no psychic work happening. She doesn't trust her intuition whatsoever. Do I want that for her? Yes. Is she a star seed? Possibly. But I had to realize in myself, it doesn't matter the rightness or the wrongness of it. It's starting to come up in mainstream experience in such a way that it is going to allow people to let it seep into their consciousness, even because she was like, well, it's not that deep to me. And I've said, well, it's deep to me. Okay. So you're claiming something that I hold very dear. And I'm just making sure we're on the same page about this, because when I have conversations with other people about being a star seed, it's a very serious conversation. It's not just something they read in the book. It's something they downloaded. They were abducted. I mean, there's lots of different things that can happen. So we want to be mindful of that as well. And there's a lot, but that has to happen. That always happens when something becomes mainstream. People get a hold of it, turn it into a hashtag, dilute it in some way. It's okay. It's just the way for it to get to the masses where we currently are. And I needed to realize that in that moment, instead of enlightening her. And it's, if you like going out in nature and seeing animals, you're a Pleiadian. And I'm like, no, this is very, very generic and very not specific, and that doesn't equate that you incarnated here to heal ancestral trauma and bring more light into the planet because you like birds and animals. Okay, so let's just be very clear. But at the same time, it could. So I needed to realize that, and let her have that, because it's very possible that she's a star seed. She just didn't activate her mission up to this point, or she just hasn't stepped into that yet. And there's a lot of that happening, and it can be frustrating, but it's part of the process.
Yeah. And I mean, even as you were talking about it, I can feel my own kind of reactions, my trigger reactions come up too, because like what you said, like when something starts to go mainstream, it's a good thing because then that information becomes more available to more people. But there's a process too where it's so frustrating that it gets diluted and, kind of what's the word? Like there's just so much room for misinterpretation around it. But I think as with anything, all we can do is like really come into our own knowing of the truth that exactly like you said, I mean, who am I to say who's a starseed and who isn't? I
Right.
I I just know that I have a strong sense of mission. I have a
Yeah.
strong, and I always have, and that's all I know. And I do believe that I'm a starseed. I personally identify strongly with the Arcturian and Pleiadian consciousness, but I have always known that like I didn't just I didn't just show up here in this life. I came here.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for me to understand the reason that I was here. But I think that is if you're listening to this, and especially if you're newly awakened and you're like, am I a starseed? Am I not allowed to claim that? You claim what feels true for you. That's the most important thing. But I would agree with you that it's more than just like taking, one of those BuzzFeed quizzes of what kind of starseed are
That
you.
was what I was going to
Um,
bring up.
what did you
She said,
now?
she said, I
Agree.
took a quiz in the back of this book and it said I was Andromedan. And I was like, okay, baby, you've come from the Andromeda galaxy to heal ancestral trauma. And the back of that book told you that. But then again, that actually could have been them trying to get to her in some way. So I needed to realize that. Now, I wasn't trying to tear her down. I was actually told her, I said, what if you're not Andromeda and you're something else? Stay open to it being something else. Don't decide you're this because you might block it from being something else. She goes, well, it's not that deep to me. And I said, oh, okay. Well, if it's just fun and games to you, I didn't realize that. This is something serious to me. And if it's not to you, we can just talk about something else. And then we got into it. Then we really got into it and we had it out. I noticed that I could have done a lot of things that I would have done a long time ago and reacted a certain way. And I did a lot of things differently this time. And although it still resulted in having to kind of part ways, it felt like like a weight had been lifted and that I just removed someone out of my energy that isn't bad, who I love dearly, but was draining my energy in certain ways and had a hold on my energy and a cord connected to me that was not an equal energy exchange. And I didn't want to continue giving any more energy to that. And there was a lot of expectations on this person's part towards what I'm supposed to be giving them. And I'm at the point right now where I don't give a fuck about any of that. I love you so much, but if you need me more than I'm able to give you, especially after I've already explained my astrology, my Juno and Aquarius, and my being a manifestor in human design, I've already explained to you all the reasons why I can go off by myself, why I can be a hermit. I'm a 2-4 in human design. So I naturally separate or go off by myself. And when people take that as you don't care about me after everything I've done for you, it's time to part ways amicably. And I stay open for you and I to coalesce at some point again, rather than shutting the door and closing you out completely and saying, you will never change. That's what I used to do. Now, let's see what happens. Let's just not be in each other's energy for right now. And if we're supposed to be at some point, it'll come back. There's a different energy to that so that I don't have to give any more of my energy away to that, and I can continue focusing on what's important, because there's a lot of people right now wanting me, wanting my attention, wanting more from me, needing more from me than I'm able to give. And that's because I do this, I have my business, I'm making content so much. These are all things that are driving me. Something's driving me and I'm going with it. And there's going to be a lot of people, and I'm pointing to them, not necessarily you, but a lot of people in your all's lives that are not doing what you're doing, who are not getting these downloads, who are not in these modes of creation and doing and having these projects and all these new ideas coming in. They're really good just drinking their wine, going to work and going home. And that's okay. But they're going to think you don't have time for them because they don't have as much stuff going on. And those are the
Mhm.
people, when they act like that, that's your chance to explain yourself and to heal something, but also to let them go if you're not getting respect about that. And if they're not understanding, it's very clear and simple like that, because we don't have room for everybody where we're going. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. You don't have room for you don't have room for everyone in your energy where you're going.
Yeah.
Everyone's allowed into the fifth dimension. Everyone. The fifth dimension is not this rapture that's going to happen and 11 chosen ones are going to fly up into the sky. Absolutely not. This is all free will. If people are not wanting to go, it's not because they were destined. You're more evolved. They're choosing that, and they're going to be okay.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean because I'm also, surprise, surprise, coming up against these themes myself of just feeling that there's not necessarily like a falling out per se that's happening, but just as we move into this next phase, I don't know, it feels like the end of December was the end of a phase. And then January,
Yes,
like, oh, you think it's still going on the way it was in December? No. And it was like, you're getting an entire operating system upgrade.
that's how I felt.
Be quiet. Let it happen. Uninstall,
Yes,
install the new one, and just let it happen.
yes,
And then in March, I started feeling like, oh, it's go time. Like it's
yes,
fucking on now.
yeah.
And I feel like a lot of us who resonate with that, it's a feeling of like I understood what you said when you said there's not going to be room where we're going for all these extra things. What it is that every part of our life has to come into total alignment with our mission. For those of us who feel like we have a mission. So anything that is like pulling and siphoning your energy away, it's not an ill will feeling. It's not like, oh, you're a taker, you're an energy vampire. Maybe
Right.
that. It's just like I have this reason that I came and it's been activated. And now
And
I
now
have
you
to
feel like you're getting in my way.
yes. Yeah, that's right.
And I'm
Or
a
I
man.
simply don't have the energy
I
for it. Like
don't
my
have
all
it.
of my energy has to go to these things. And I think that's okay. Well, I know it's okay. I think it's okay for us to let it be okay, even if it's uncomfortable. And I believe that's part of the reality, like the pixelation of reality completely rearranging itself. And so
Hmm.
you weren't they can't come to the fifth dimension. It's just that what I understand about the fifth dimension is that, there's this thing that I don't know. It was, I think it was Jesus that said it, but it might have been the Apostle Paul. It was probably the Apostle Paul. Doesn't matter. It was about, I think it's as easy for man to pass through the gates of heaven as it is to pass through the eye of the needle. And I never understood that as a kid because, like, I was like, what do you mean the eye of a needle? Like a little, like, sewing needle? They're like, yeah. And I was like, what? Now I
Yeah.
completely understand it that there's like, we can only pass through single file. We don't pass through holding our kids' hands, which is like my
Right.
thing that I work on every day. We don't pass through
Right.
holding our hands, which is what you've been working on. We don't pass through
Yes.
holding our partner's hands or our friend's hands. We pass through single file, and it is each of us coming into such energetic sovereignty and integrity, our wholeness and our authenticity, every part of us stacked in perfect alignment.
Coherence.
Yes, that we then are able to pass through, I mean, the eye of the needle is an analogy, but it's like pass through like a mesh or a sieve or
Yeah.
what would have felt like a barrier. So I kind of see it too as like chains on a necklace. Like, I have this necklace on. Sometimes the chains get all turned into a knot, right? And that won't pass through the eye of the needle. But if I can untangle it, if we cord cut and we untangle and we process our traumas, we heal from our shit, we stop projecting onto others or onto like the evil government or whatever, and we
Right.
are completely in our power and our sovereignty, then we can pass through single file, all chains still linked together. We're not leaving people behind. It's not about, I don't get to bring my children. It's that my children are whole sovereign beings unto themselves. And we are attached, but I don't have to bring them through.
That's right. They'll bring themselves through. And if not, that was a choice on the soul's part. And there does come a point where things get very uncomfortable for our human self. Our human
Yeah.
gets very uncomfortable by the idea of not attaching and it only being about us. And because we're all one. So if you make it through there, they're more likely to make it through rather than trying to shove both of you in there when it doesn't work that way. And how one of your children could have a mission to go. They have another mission to stay and learn, and that can sound bad. And it doesn't have to be that way. And it doesn't have to be this fifth dimension is not this utopia place we're all going and we're going to leave these people behind. It's not quite like that. It's much more quantum physics than that. It's much more vibrational fields of resonance overlapping. There'll be a point where we will be so out of alignment with people that we're calling the 3D people. Let's just call them that so that we all understand, even though it's way more complex than that. That's so reductionist of me to say it that way. The 3D people and the 5D people, if we want to put it that way, will exist on the same earth, but they'll be ghosts to each other. You'll pass right through them. You won't even perceive of them simply because it's a parallel earth and it's operating in two different frequency ranges. So they might as well be spirits at that point. But that, who knows when that will be? We're in the beginning stages of those timeline splitting. This could be 300 Earth years from now when this fully has been realized and happening. And by that point, the people that went the 3D route and the 5D route, especially the 3D, won't even really know that that happened. They won't be aware that there are people that are existing outside of their visible light spectrum, outside of their perception, that exist in a higher frequency range. And because time isn't linear, it's already happening that way. So we already exist in this fifth dimension that we're creating right now, which is why we're getting the downloads of it right now, because it already exists. We're actually just moving towards it, not necessarily creating it from scratch. The template's already been made. So there are people who are not going to go there, and they are not less than, and they are also not less evolved or any of that. They exist where they exist, and that's the experience they want to have. And isn't that a beautiful thing that they get to choose that on a soul level? So the savior complex will come up for a lot of light workers and starseeds as well. You don't have anyone to save. That is so 3D, that whole needing a savior. So even us thinking that we have the answers and we're going to save them, we've got to let that go too, because that means that they don't have their own free will and their own power and their own intuition, and they're less than. You're looking at another sovereign being and thinking they're not sovereign. That's not a very high perspective of you. So just, there are all of these things to consider.
Absolutely. I feel like rather than saving anyone, what we're doing is fine tuning our frequency, and we are allowing our frequency to, it's like a ripple effect. Like as each of us fine tunes our own frequency to exactly a dimensional reality of Earth that already exists. So we're not creating it. We are just sort of creating the pathway through the fine tuning of our frequency. And we bring along others who are in the vicinity of matching that frequency and who desire from a soul level to do so.
And that is beyond the truth. I mean, I just keep bringing people to me that are so incredible and special. I'm going to Sedona, Arizona here in the next couple of weeks to go to vortex points and grid points and move energy. I'm like, where? And these people are inviting me to do this. And this is very sacred work. And I want to learn this. I want to be on the ground doing this kind of light work. And that comes from letting go of, oh, I don't hate you and I don't dislike you, but I'm going to let go of you, make room for something else. We have to be letting go, because as we pass into these upper dimensions and we raise our frequency, it's like passing through a film or a screen. The heavier parts of you, the more thick, dense parts of you are going to have to fall away. It's not that you're making yourself smaller, you're making yourself less dense so that you can move into these finer frequencies. And other people are not always going to go there. And that's okay. What we don't want is getting into the superiority complex around, I'm the 5D light worker starseed, and you're just the sheeple, sleeple human who needs my help, but you won't listen because you're stubborn. So I must go on with my mission and leave you behind, little human, because I'm actually an alien inside of a human body, and I'm better than you, and I know more than you. There's a lot of that going on. It's just normal. A lot of people have to have that in the beginning stages of their awakening, that kind of like, I have all the answers and you don't. That really gives their ego something to anchor to at the beginning. But if you're in that stage, which I have definitely been, make sure you keep moving beyond that and realize if you feel for any second that you have the right answer and that this is the right way and they just don't have the answer and they're just idiots for not they're just idiots for getting these COVID vaccines. They're just idiots for voting. I mean, I've been there, not
Mhm.
necessarily in those topics necessarily. I'm just using those as examples. But if you feel that way, you're also, that's very 3D. That's very separation
I was gonna say
consciousness.
that's just more of that human 3D density.
But you're,
It's
but you
nice.
are getting somewhere. You're
Yeah.
choosing another perspective of it. And that means you have a broader or more wide perspective, a multidimensional perspective that just means you're on your path. You're getting there. Spiritual bypassing, toxic positivity, all of these things are a part of the process when you're learning this process of becoming less human and being more spiritual. There's a lot of, we don't know what we're doing, and you just have to go off the information that you have now and where you currently are vibrationally and honor that and know that you'll keep progressing. You're not supposed to know trigonometry before you learn geometry and algebra 1. Just take it step by step and quit thinking that time is running out, because there's no such thing. And that because I have a lot of clients who look at me and go, well, you're 20 years old, which I'm not. You're 20 years old and I'm 45. How come that didn't happen to me at 20? It didn't happen to this. I'm not 20 years old. And they think that, well, how come he got to wake up before I did? There's a lot of that kind of bullshit going on about,
Yeah.
why didn't I already know? Or how come I'm just finding this out? It's like, no, that was the time in which it was supposed to happen. This is the Great Awakening now. If you were born in 1982, you're going to be later to the game than someone born in 1991, because we're all awakening generally at the same time after 2012. But you're older when it happens than I was. That's all. Okay. It's
Yeah.
it's not that I knew more or God deemed me more worthy to. I had someone get so angry at me one time because she never had a Kundalini awakening before. She's like, well, I don't have Kundalini awakening. And that didn't happen for me, as if I think I'm better because I had Kundalini awakening. And I'm like, you could have had Kundalini awakening in 12 lifetimes ago from a linear perspective. And you could already have come in with chakras cleared much more than me and be much more aligned. And she was like, oh, that really fed her ego. She liked that a lot. But you could tell that it's a competition for her.
Yeah.
Who's more awake? Who's got the answers more? Who knows more conspiracy theories? Who's able to spot the MK Ultra faster?
Yeah.
That's what it is for them. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not about coming into their fullness of being. It's not about anchoring light. It's about exposing the lies and letting the government know and everyone know, I'm not an idiot. You sound like you're proving something to me here. Okay. You got something to prove there by letting us know how not asleep you are and how you've got all this figured out. It's I know everything complex too. And I've done all that. I used to spiritually bypass when I was much younger, back in the Abraham days. It was all about law of attraction. Don't cry, just meditate your way into bliss. I had to go through that. I didn't understand things at the time. I was just given all this multidimensional information, but didn't have any framework to apply it to. And so we stumble around as humans at first, and we've got to give each other grace for that.
We do, because the thing is that we don't have mystery schools in place anymore. We don't have paths to be able to,
Interesting. You would say that.
we don't have paths to properly receive this kind of information and attune ourselves to it. And so we are stumbling around in the dark and bumping up against our own egos all the time. All of us, myself included, we all are. It's part of the awakening process. And I would say that the ego is the part that we can get stuck in for the long. I mean, it is the part, right? That's what creates the whole hyper focus on the
Yes.
there are so many facets.
Yes, and the ego is not bad. When people say the ego is edging God out, and I'm like, that was cute, but the ego is God. You could say, no, it isn't. The ego is the false self. There's all kinds of things people have to say. Well, who created the ego? The idea of the
Well,
ego,
yeah, exactly. Who created?
it's like it's an anchoring point. It's a focal point. It's an ability to anchor something into a self focus, which is necessary. And you mentioned mystery schools. So I'm just going to go for it because I feel compelled to do so. The spiritual community that I was almost roped into, okay, and by my neck, was a community called the Modern Mystery School. And I had hesitations about saying this because there are mystery schools out there, and this is a pyramid scheme, and it is a cult. And I don't want to take them down. They're going to take themselves down, and it's just going to happen because they don't fit into the new energy we're moving into. Someone like me is going to pick up on all the red flags immediately and make your way out of there. And what's interesting is what brought me to that was Teresa Bullard, who is a physicist, and she has a show on Gaia called Mystery Teachings. It's an excellent show. She's so well spoken, and she's very high up in the ranks of this Modern Mystery School. So I had to realize that this beautiful being with all this beautiful information and this eloquent speaking in this show on Gaia, bringing me all this information, she's also infiltrated Gaia through the Modern Mystery School to
Yeah.
recruit more members and to bring the idea of DNA life activation to, because all of that stuff made so much sense to me, turning on the DNA, turning up, turning all that on. And it's really important that people understand that the Modern Mystery School and things like that are built off a pyramid system, are built off fear, and it is so money driven that you do. And yes, it is a direct lineage. There's rituals, there's teachings, there's all that stuff that give you that path. We don't need that anymore. That it's a 3,000-year-old lineage. Well, I'm sure it did work for them back then. The ancient wisdom is incredible. The information is incredible, but it is very much indoctrination. And there's a whole segment of the workshop. When you do their 2-day workshop, there's a whole PowerPoint presentation. And it was almost 2-hour segment just on discernment and indoctrination, where they teach you about how others are going to try to indoctrinate you and what is real and what isn't. That's how tricky they actually are. The other people in there were sitting in there with me really into it. And so was I, because I thought, this is making so much sense. I guess this is the teaching that aligns with me the most. Teresa Bullard, she was right, until you realize that it's a bunch of men in costumes running a club based on money, sexual abuse, and power. And as soon as she said the 3 men who run this thing, are straight men and the founders, as soon as I saw his picture, I was like, he's a cult leader. He looks like a cult leader. He looks full of shit. She called him a magician. They are so full of shit. I think that she believes in what she does, but I also know that she absolutely believes in the power of the pyramid system in making her successful and making her money. She understands that she can rope you in, and once you get your DNA life activation, well, then you got to get your full spirit activation, and then you got to get your galactic activation, and then you got to go to the Healers Academy and become a DNA life activation practitioner. And then once you do that, you get to go on to Insophic Reiki and all of these things until you spent about $50,000 to $100,000 over 10 years starting your own practice. And then you've got quotas of people. How many people are you going to refer to the Healers Academy? Because you get points for that. It's not about, is this right for their energy? It's about, you've got to come get your DNA activated, because if you don't get your DNA activated, you won't ever attract anything that you're looking for. And once you get activated, you hold this much more light. And then you get full spirit, you hold this much more light. Then once you get initiated, your energy field is 500 feet long. And then once you go to Healers Academy, it's 1,000 feet big. The things I was being told, I was just like,
Right. And it's stuff that you can't verify. we were saying at the beginning of the conversation, the Neptune and Pisces, Jupiter, Neptune, Pisces energy is that so tough because we're both in this field, right? And like we have felt for ourselves the absolute remarkable change that happens when you embark on this path for yourself. And all I can ever say again is like, because I also believe it's a psyop that spiritual practitioners should not ask for money. Because I think about them like, how would I even be able to do anything if I didn't? I still have to pay rent on Friday, right?
Right.
So I believe that that is a psyop to keep us disempowered. But I'm glad you brought this up because there's a level of discernment. It's really not about the price tag, everyone. This is what I figured out. It's not about the price tag. It's about, are you being led back into your power in every moment of the experience that you've invested in? Or are you being told that you need to, invest in this, or you need to invest in this,
Yes.
or you can only do it by our methodology, or like,
Yes.
your
Yes.
energy field is now so many hundreds of thousands of bio units. Like,
Yes. So
I don't know.
I thought to myself, why is Teresa Bullard, this smart woman, why is she involved with this? Because she's a divina. She's one of the Council of 12. So in the modern mystery school, there's an oracle who has to be female. And I said, so there's no room for non-binary energies in the modern mystery school? They said, no, it has to be female. The order of three, which is three males, and then the Council of 12, and then the 22 this, and the 12 archangels, and the 22 this, and it's hierarchies.
Yeah.
It's all, they even call it the HOL. I asked the hierarchy of light if I should blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, the whole thing is very patriarchal and set up as we have to activate you and turn on your DNA, and it works for everybody. And these could actually be beneficial healing modalities. I'm not sure. I got really sick right before this workshop and was purging, and I didn't feel good after the activation. My body didn't feel good. And she just was like, oh, your body's releasing, you're purging, your cells are releasing things. And I think she was right, but I think it was my body trying to refuse the indoctrination that just happened, because they had us turning in clockwise circles and saying these mantras and things like that. It felt like I was being indoctrinated using direction. This stuff exists. And there were people in that class who completely were into it and fell for it because they have no basis or understanding otherwise. So, and what's interesting about the astrology piece, to go back to that one more time, is that I'm going through two transits right now called Neptune square Mercury and Neptune square the Sun, where Neptune is at 21 degrees of Pisces or 23 degrees of Pisces, making a 90-degree angle to my Sun in Gemini at 23 degrees, and my Mercury in Gemini. When I had this workshop, the Sun was conjunct Neptune, and it was in early March. So as the Sun formed a conjunction to Neptune, that activated my Neptune square the Sun transit that's happening for me specifically, and pulled that energy right in. It was very synchronistic like that. It always happens that way. So I also told myself, it's okay, Christopher, forgive yourself. This was supposed to happen. This is your Neptune and the Sun bullshit that's happening right now, which is all about illusion and falling for something and making choices out of not unreality, I would put it. So the astrological piece can give you quite a bit of insight and also help you accept where you currently are and understand why you would have moved into that. Because Neptune's not squaring my Sun to hurt me, although it's a difficult transit, it can be. It's doing that to awaken my intuition and dissolve pieces of my ego. That's what it's doing, which can help me if I use it that way. It can make me want to escape and do drugs, or it can make me want to tune in and experience higher aspects of myself. That's where the free will comes in.
And that's the benefit of knowing your astrology and what's going on, especially during these very, very interesting and active times, is being able to see like, oh, I'm going through this rough thing or this growth phase that feels really uncomfortable. I might want to just like numb out and do drugs. And then,
Right.
but
Right.
this is how I can use it constructively because I'm aware of it.
And that's what quantum astrology is all about. So when you come and get a reading from me, I don't tell you who you are. You know who you are. I tell you the potential for who you could become, the highest potential for you to be. Oh, you have moon in Capricorn, not the best placement for the moon to be in. How can you use that energy to become that CEO that you were born to be, to become that boss energy instead of that extremely insecure fear of failure? Your moon in Capricorn drives you from a fear of failure. Let's transmute that into a thirst for success, into a drive for success. It's different. So it's about turning the energy and activating you through your astrological chart and understanding the higher aspect of all of your energies so that you can start choosing, oh, I have moon in Leo. I can either express through pride or I can express with power and warmth and generosity. It's so that you understand both aspects of yourself so that you don't believe that you really don't have any, like these people who come to me and they're like, I don't have all that darkness. I don't have all that shadow stuff that people talk about. And I'm just like, they're not even there yet. They're not there yet. And it's going to hit them so hard when they've got to do it. And maybe they are enlightened and they are an ascended master in human form. I don't know. When those people come, I'm like, okay, I always let them know, okay, and no offense if you have Taurus in your chart, but especially females with moon in Taurus, especially, okay? They do not like having their astrology chart read, or people with rising in Scorpio, especially. They can be very like, here, I'll sign up for a reading, but I'm also not going to tell you that you're right about any of that. I'm going to go, the whole time. So I let them know when they're doing that. I extra let them know, oh, you have moon in Taurus. This can make you very stubborn to other people's perceptions of you. It makes you move through things emotionally at a slow rate. Or it can make you, and I give them the positive aspects of that. So even in that moment, they can choose to be more open or to move through something more quickly. You're not bound or controlled by your astrological chart. It's a framework. It's a playground. It's a jungle gym that you can play in and you can work your way out of and activate the highest potentials of it.
I love the way that you described that. Okay, so if anybody wants to work with you, what do you have on offer for them? You have the quantum astrology readings, which sound amazing.
Yes. So it is currently 111 where I am right now as we're bringing this to a close. Okay, perfect. So I think that's so cool that we would bring this to a close at 111. Please go to my website if you have any questions about anything, theastromedium.com. You can find services. I offer Ascension and Awakening coaching, basic and advanced. I offer basic, advanced, and complete astro mediumship readings, which these are the readings that you would get if you wanted psychic medium and astrology in one. That encompasses everything I do. I also do astrocartography, and we can include that in your astro mediumship. I also do just astrology readings for people who don't want psychic information, who don't want to hear from their loved ones. It's very rare that I do readings like that. Everyone wants to hear what their spirit has to say about their chart. But I also just offer psychic and mediumship readings as well. But I also do cacao ceremonies every month on the full moon. I offer plant medicine retreats that are intensive 3-day retreats for my clients. And so all of that information is on my website. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. And again, I know I said this the first time, but I've had a reading with Christopher and it was really amazing. And he didn't have any back information. I didn't give him anything. I just showed up like a regular client.
That's how everyone's supposed to show up.
And he totally tuned in to the exact thing that I was like, especially coming for. It was really amazing. So I highly, highly recommend connecting with him. And yeah, I'm so excited that we had this conversation, 2 conversations this morning. It was amazing. Thank you for being my first interview back on the podcast.
I am so honored. Thank you for having me. And I appreciate your time and your energy. And for those of you watching, I feel the same way about Amy. I feel activated every time I'm in your energy and I'm not kissing your ass. And Everybody needs to get this book. It's called The Priestess Transmissions. And it is so well done and so well orchestrated. I made a live video about it. I don't know if you saw a whole 20 minutes about it. And
Oh my gosh,
people
I
want
didn't
to
see
know.
that.
Yeah, it's on my Instagram about the book and how it's formatted and what I feel. Oh, perfect timing. Perfect timing. You are perfect. Oh my gosh, look, it's me. I have my ears used to do that too. They kind of curved out like that. Oh. So yes, now I don't know what to say. That anytime an animal or a baby comes into the room, forget everything. None of that's important. Screw 5D. It's all about this baby.
This little baby. I'm going to take him for a walk to get some sun codes.
Codes. Yes, I need to go out and do that.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was so
Thank
awesome.
you, Amy. I really appreciate you. And I'm sending you lots of love. And I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, beautiful listeners, for your time and your attention. We love you.
Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.